This is Travis Faust and Derek Blitch for the coaching video interview about IDing a current situation and identifying a goal and a teaching strategy. Today is March 10th, or is it the 10th? Yes, today's March 10th. Coach Blitch, you want to introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, my name is Derek Blitch. I am an 8th grade ELA teacher at Columbia Middle School.
Awesome. Thanks. So I observed Coach Blitch's class twice, two different classes. They're both 8th grade ELA classes. And we're going to talk a little bit about my observations and his thoughts and our thoughts about them and see what we can identify as the current situation. And so let's see here.
But I have used YouTube videos frequently. I think a lot of that's assumption. What I mean by that is assumption that they know what that means. So that you understand what I mean by that is, it's funny I say these things. Look, I'm 48 years old, and I'll say stuff to them like, man, y'all have so much stuff that I didn't have.
Mm-hmm.
Heck, I remember using an encyclopedia to find out information.
Yeah, and they got Google.
I had a TRS 80 as a gifted kid, and we're the only ones that got those in the school, that kind of thing. I mean, it's an old Radio Shack computer, which was the thing, dude, And so...
but now Google, YouTube,
now,
internet,
these phones right here,
yeah,
there's as much technology in those as, in
the space shuttle.
the first rocket that went to the moon, right?
Right.
So with that said, some of that's tongue-in-cheek kind of stuff too, but just say, look, you don't have an excuse. Study for this stuff. I put plenty of stuff on Google Classroom and stuff like that. And I say, guys, hey, if you need to, you can go to YouTube and find more stuff. That's really what I mean by that. It's kind of a casual thing to say to them. But
we know they know how to use YouTube.
Of course.
They use YouTube a lot.
Of course.
Yeah.
They walk down the hallway when they're not supposed to have a phone out, and they're looking at Snapchat, Instagram, and all this sort of stuff too. So, like I say, a lot of that's just an assumption.
How about this? Have you ever had them make a video with either Flipgrid or iPhone or iMovie?
iMovie and stuff like that. Yeah, they've made those. Matter of fact, Adobe Spark, they've had to do those before, some things of that nature. Yeah. So with all that said, it just means that I don't know if it's just trying to put it in their lap as opposed to feeling like it's always in my lap.
Give them responsibility and
to say, look, dude, you've got a quiz coming up,
yeah,
and you need to be able to think about this and think, do I know why this is? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's frustrating for me as a teacher when that student, because I do actually go through and show them almost like a self-feedback sort of mechanism they can use. I'm looking at this. Oh, you need to stop and reflect. Tell them all the time, reflection is very important. Reflect on, do you understand this or do you not? Now, the thing is, I understand too. Their concept of do I understand might be different than my concept of do they understand. I get that. But I also know that we were going into a quiz, which we took today, which I had some that did well on it. I had some that didn't do too well on it. So what we're going to do tomorrow is go back with the ones that did not do well, and we're going to review some things. Ask them, what do you understand? What do you not understand? Where can I help you? And that sort of thing. And I'll go ahead tomorrow and let the ones that have a grasp on it utilize that in some writing. So that's sort of the plan from here. Now, that's not to ding them and that sort of thing, but yeah, I want to put the ball in their court and say, look, how important is this actually to you? I want you to think about it. And if you probably heard me say, hey, number 1, I could do this in my sleep. Oh, I'm sorry. Number 1, I ain't got a clue about this. Or number 10, I could do this in my sleep. Where are you on that scale? I want them to be able to think.
Check in with them.
That's right. I want them to be able to think on that. And now, is that the best way? Maybe not, but a lot of times they're 8th graders and they understand that sort of terminology, understand that sort of rapport you got with them, things like that. So
they need to own their education
Well,
And they need to have responsibility for it.
well,
what you're saying.
that's basically what I'm saying. No doubt about that.
So in these two lessons, how would you rate it? 1 being not good at all, 10 being the best ever. How would you rate your teaching in those lessons?
Well, so I guess it kind of depends on what you consider to be teaching. Did I quote unquote teach something during that time?
Your performance, how would you rate
You
your
know, so,
performance, I guess?
you know, because really in the grand scheme of things, what we were doing is a performance task. You're doing the slideshow, doing a performance task that then because that's the, mentioned earlier that there wasn't a ticket out the door or anything like that. Well, technically that was the performance task. That is what would help me to see, are you kind of getting this, understanding, blah, 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 right? So that's how I kind of saw that. Anyway, so going back to that question, was I presenting any new information? No, at that point it was practice / me seeing if they get it kind of thing. I mean, from that perspective, heck, 1 to 10, did I conduct class okay? I mean, a 9, I guess, but was I teaching anything per se? I mean, we were practicing and bolstering things, if that makes sense, what I'm getting at. I did not present new information.
Right.
But working with them, hopefully allowing, I don't remember right then exactly, if they had grammatical questions for me, I just don't remember. A lot of times in those classes like that, that's when they are asking me questions about the function of, for example, they are just participles. They're asking these questions. Hey, because what I was wanting them to do was to really give me examples, not just these rote examples, but true examples from themselves. Anyway, that's talking a lot about that. But
How do you think you could make it a 10?
let's see. So, in theory, I could probably formalize it some, because I'll have to admit that it was probably a little casual. What do I mean by that? Well, it wasn't a big project. It was something that, hey, you got 25 minutes, put this thing together. You're going to collaborate with a buddy and put these things together. Now, actually, as I look at it, that activity probably could have been a little more challenging.
You're talking about the slideshow?
That's correct. Yeah. So I could have maybe added some things to that as far as, to up the rigor a bit. That's one thing. Another thing, I think, as you were talking about earlier, to give them something to look at, to say, hey, this is an idea. These are some things that I'm looking for. That's probably something I could have done a little better so that they could, and I get that a lot just from our conversation here, but like I've said, our conversation from earlier I had with these other folks. To be a little more specific in what we want, and not only that, but to give some sort of opportunity truly for them to assess. Besides it, in our conversation here, to either them assess themselves or me assess them more clearly. That's right.
Yeah, that's an idea.
Mm-hmm.
So that sort of leads me into the next question is, we need to set a goal for you for the coming days and coming lessons that is uses this acronym of PEERS. I like this acronym: positive, easy, emotional, reachable, and S is student oriented. So a goal that has these success factors for the students, like it might be for them to score 80% of them to score 90 or better on the quiz, or something like that.
Sure.
What do you think in the coming days and weeks we can do? What kind of goal do you think would be a good idea that would help them to learn?
So we've got 2 more types of verbals, gerunds and infinitives that we're covering. So we have the opportunity to, and I'm going to have to go back and do a little bit of reteach after the quiz, obviously, with some folks, not everybody, but with some folks. But also moving to the others, I'll have some opportunity maybe to put some of the things we just talked about in here. I might not do the same activity. But let's see, what were your acronym? What were
It's positive, easy, emotional, so that it's not, I guess, boring, so it's kind of
Sure.
engaging. Reachable, attainable,
Okay.
and oriented, of course, around them.
Okay.
What do you think about, say, the people that didn't do good on the quiz or failed the quiz? Maybe make a goal around them learning it or scoring better, or
Well, sure. I mean, we could do that. Yeah. I mean, we could.
how would you feel? What do you think would be the measuring stick of, all right, they know it well enough to proceed, kind of?
Well, in general, based on that, I mean, I would look at probably either if they were to make just on that quiz, let's say they made an 80 or an 85%, I would be comfortable with them knowing the information well enough to then us being able to move on to where we're really put it in our writing. Since that's my overall goal anyway, is so they're able to use them in their writing effectively.
So the
Okay.
people who got an 85 or better, can you feel like they can utilize
They at
this
least-
as they write?
They at least, well, that doesn't mean that their writing is excellent.
Uh-huh.
That just means that they understand the function of
Right.
this well enough that I could say, hey, I want you to write a sentence where the first phrase in the sentence includes a participle or its participle phrase, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Quiz.
Mhm.
So what do you think are some good teaching strategies that you could employ to maybe just
Well-
one or two good teaching strategies?
Well, I would say probably to
research says.
bump those students up in a class. Okay. To really, I think I may be wrong about this, but a lot of what I used so far has been like whole group type teaching more than anything else, except for when they did just their little pairs to do certain little activities. Okay, so after this quiz, what I really need to do is do some more small group work, meaning I can have an activity. I'll have an activity for the upper level people to work on practicing utilizing this in the writing. And then the lower performers, of course, what I can do is work with them. It won't be one-on-one, but at least in sort of a small group, and just have a little, counsel with that small group. What I'll do is look through these. I'll look through the results. It was in Illuminate, so I can look through the results and kind of get a feel for what's their deficit, and hopefully kind of work with them personally to get them where they are understanding better. Because
So you'll basically be able to split your kids up. The ones that you feel got an 85 or better, the ones that you feel are doing pretty well, they can be extended.
That's
we
right.
can extend with them,
sure,
put them on something else, and then the lower group, you can go reteach them and try to
Correct.
bring them back up.
mm-hmm.
So are you gonna have a direct instruction with them, or are you gonna turn them loose with each other, or what do you feel like, what might be a good idea?
Well,
to
so
do?
I'll have to look at the numbers. I'll
Yeah.
look at the numbers because
See how
if it's
many?
that's right, because it may very well be that if I have two smaller groups I can work with, that I may have a practice activity where they are working together while I'm working with another group, and then switch them, which I've done before, where they're
Oh, I see. So you're working with 3 or 4 here, the other 3 or 4 low kids are over here doing something else.
that's right.
Then I see. And then
That's correct.
then I
So,
got
so while the higher folks are working on their writing thing,
Uh-huh.
right? So, yeah, so that's probably, and I would, as much as I can strategically within those smaller groups, if I can figure out, somebody in each of those groups that's maybe a little more proficient on it, that as they are talking amongst themselves, you know, they can either figure it out or something like that while I'm working with the other group.
So it won't be a random selection. You will choose perhaps maybe a middle of the road student that you know is capable of teaching some of the lower ones and don't mind doing it.
That's right, yeah.
So that they can help themselves,
That's right.
and then you can help them as well.
That's right.
So do you think you'll go back over the same stuff you used to teach it with before? Do you think similar type, like underline this, circle that, or are you going to have them write out from scratch, or what do you think? Maybe what might
You're talking about from the reteach
yeah,
perspective?
yeah. When you go to reteach, how do you think you'll actually?
Well, you know, a lot of times what I've done, I mean, you know, you teach, so you know that you do it all kinds of different ways sometimes. You know, if you're in a little small group and it's sort of a more intimate setting, you can kind of talk with them and say, look, what is it? I'm looking at your tests here.
So you think you might go over the quiz with them?
Sure.
Like, here's
Oh, yeah.
put it in front of them.
At the
say,
very
why
least,
did you choose this?
and that's correct.
Right.
Why
Get
did
into
you
their brain
think?
and right.
Why did you think that this was the right answer?
Yeah, and I totally agree with you. I love to do that because it blows our mind from our point of view why the student would choose this particular answer
That's
that makes
correct.
no sense.
Until they tell me. and
Right. Yeah.
I kind of, in your
It's
little brain,
enlightening.
it kind of makes sense.
Right.
Okay.
It
But
can be enlightening.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. That's right.
To put a nice little tidy bow on this coaching session, this first coaching session, we discussed the 2 lessons that I observed with Mr. Blitch and 8th grade ELA, and identified all kind of the current situation, talked about his transitions, talked about how he corrects his students, how he manages his classroom, how he has them turn things in, how he assesses what they know and what they don't know, and just how he teaches them. And then we set up a few goals to have the lowest performing students on this particular quiz and this particular subject, to bring them up to at least an 85 so that they may use this technique in their writing. And we identified a couple teaching strategies to help do that, which is to reteach in small groups and go over the quiz with the students who did not do well and figure out how they can do better so that we can reach our goal.